This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
An under-admitted part of the crisis of the church is this embrace of materialism at all levels of the church. And we speak often when it comes to materialism and the crisis of the laity that for all too many Catholics, they are Catholic on Sunday when they go to Mass. Maybe they say a meal blessing, and that's about it, right? And that's if they go to Mass every Sunday. The average Catholic, at least in the Western world, goes to Mass like twice a month. That's bad enough by itself. But when it comes to the fundamental elements of the crisis of the church, it's hard to escape the problem of materialism. And that's the focus on things secular, casting our pearls before swine, essentially trying to create utopia on earth or being obsessed with money, those sorts of things. Francis is right when he critiques materialism, when he goes after materialism and tells Catholics not to be so materialistic. He's also the biggest materialist in the church because when you listen to the gospel he preaches, it's a gospel of materialism. It's pretty clear that he is engaged in the work of trying to build a better world, which you can only do to a certain degree. You can't actually create a utopia on earth. You're not going to solve poverty. You're not going to solve these issues that he preaches against all the time. The poor we will always have with us, our Lord tells us. It is our duty as Catholics to help them. But you're not going to do that with secular governmental mechanisms. And the point here is that materialism is a big problem in the church, much more so than many of us want to admit. But this materialist problem is fundamentally seen in the laity more than it is in the hierarchy. The hierarchy are as a problem for us in as much that they reflect all the problems we have as Catholics in the society. Everything we do, we see in the laity, that the laity does, we see in the hierarchy. All the evil sins that many of them promote, that many of them defend, their unwillingness to actually admit that outside the church there is no salvation, is reflected in the laity. It's a reform of the laity that is needed in our time more than almost anything else. And from a reform of the laity, you'll get better bishops and you'll get better priests and the rest of it. And unfortunately, there are times where stories come to our attention that really make this point for us, that drive this home. Usually if you think of the worst kinds of lay people, you tend to think of politicians who profess with their lips that they are Catholic, while then promoting the evil sacrifice to Moloch, or denying the church's teaching on matters of the flesh and whatever else you care to name. But there are other times that this appears too, and sometimes they don't make that big of a headline. But I have for you a story today, a relatively small one that really drives this point home for us, and I'm going to ask you, how many of you are aware of Catholic radio stations in the United States that stopped being Catholic, that just started preaching either generic Christianity or became just full-on secular country music, rock music, pop music, whatever, radio stations or sports radio, while they were still owned by the same companies? I'm very curious if you know of any cases like this in your community, because something like this very nearly happened because of materialism, and it happened in Spain, and it should give us all pause. So headline from Info Vaticana. Good news from Catalonia. The director of Radio Estel resigns. Catalonia is a region in Spain. If you've ever read George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia, it's probably one of the more famous books of the 20th century. That takes place in that part of Spain. The linguistic needs of Catalonia are a little different than they are in other parts of Spain. But this radio station served the people of that region, and it did so very well. It offered the Holy Rosary, and it offered some of the actual liturgy of the hours, and it offered it in the Catalan language, which was the only place you could get that, other than maybe your local parish. And a lot of local parishes don't have a daily Mass offering because of the lack of priestly vocations, especially in many parts of Europe. And this radio station, despite having this kind of a prominent role in the community, its director decided maybe we should turn this into a secular radio station, to leave behind the Christianity stuff and just make money. And that went over not terribly well. He eventually resigned. Here's the story from Info Vaticana, and they really reposted this from what looks like either a Spanish language or a Catalonian blog. But here is the story And this is a cautionary tale for everybody in the United States and in the West in general, outside of just Spain, because this can happen in your area very easily. In fact, I think in the United States, this could happen very easily, especially if you have an independent Catholic radio station. That's not part of the big national Catholic radio station networks, because there's at least 2 of those out there. Anyway, from the article, quote, Tony Hervas is no longer the director of Radio Estel, the radio station of the Archdiocese of Barcelona that can be heard throughout Catalonia. He has not been dismissed, but has resigned. The reason is that he was not prepared to include the recitation of the Rosary and Lauds in its programming schedule. When he was pressured to do so, he felt discredited because he did not have enough freedom to decide about the station and decided to leave the post. The current director has been appointed with the approval of Cardinal Omea by the Delegate of Media, Deacon Ramon Oye, with whom he was a collaborator. The director is once again a layperson. After 21 years of direction by the priests, Monsignor Octavi Sanchez and Monsignor Jaume Aymer. The promoter of the initial project, Francesc Vinyes, a member of the Casa de Santiago, which ended up being secularized, was also a priest. Hervas wanted to give the station a radical change, trying to turn it into a conventional station to compete with other powerful networks. In other words, it practically lost its character as a supposedly religious station to become just another radio station. To make that leap, he decided to transfer the religious programming that was there to the internet, creating a channel called Anima Estel. Once freed from it, he could undertake a radio project outside of the Christian religion. The experiment did not work out well because the radio station did not grow an audience, because the other stations already have a very established audience. The only thing that was done was to lose the audience that it had for its religious programming. Specifically, the recitation of the Rosary, the only one in the Catalan language on the radio, was followed by many Catalan Catholics, while they were prepared to go to work or in the car to go to their work obligations. The change generated much indignation, and many people addressed the delegation and directly the cardinal to express their displeasure and disappointment at the removal of the Rosary from the radio. End quote. There were some translation issues there, but I think you get the idea. It's why there's a little bit of difference between the text and the audio. Now, that's his stated reason, but I'm surprised that the man running that station, who I would assume was a Catholic, would not understand what it would look like to have the Rosary and the hours taken off the radio, put on the internet so they could turn it to a secular station. That many of us would look at that and think there was something demonic going on here. Now, I'm not saying the man in question here is in alliance with some sort of demons, made a pact with them or anything like that, but this is clearly diabolical. If you're pulling the Holy Rosary off the radio, which a lot of people rely on to help them pray the Rosary on their drive to work every day, that is, by definition, diabolical. Whether or not there was a demon whispering in his ear to do this or not, or if it was just his own terrible idea. The point of this today is that this is a cautionary tale for you, because this can happen anywhere. I know that there are plenty of radio stations that were just generically Christian, meaning they were Protestant of some kind or another, that have changed their formats entirely to become probably usually sports radio or country music, because that's the kind that you might be able to still keep that same audience for. It can happen for Catholic radio too. And yes, it can happen for Catholic television as well. Don't think that this couldn't happen to EWTN. If their average age continues to go up and their viewership goes down, do not be surprised if some bishop somewhere decides to try to spin the thing off. Curious what you think about this. Are you that surprised that the laity would demand the bishop get rid of this guy? Are you that surprised that the director of a radio station, who's apparently a Catholic, at a Catholic station, would try to completely change the format to strip the faith out of it to make a few bucks? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.